all about augmented reality, or AR for short, and how it's changing the game in education, especially when it comes to career technical education.
You know what's really cool about this? People think AR and they think those like headsets you see, but it's way more than that.
Right.
We're talking about taking everyday devices like phones and tablets and like making them tools to bring digital stuff right into the real world.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like taking what you're learning and just making it like come to life.
Totally.
And for this deep dive, we've got a whole bunch of sources to look at. We've got news articles, we've got tech reports, and get this, even a lesson plan guide straight from Apple.
And what's great about having all these different sources is it gives us a kind of a well-rounded view, right, of what's actually happening with AR in education right now.
Totally. So let's jump right in, okay? Let's start with this article from EdSurge. They talked to a teacher in Texas, Heather Brantley, and she was really into how AR can take, technology and turn it into something educators call a manipulative.
A manipulative.
Yeah, and I know you're probably thinking, what is that? Well, it's basically like any object that students can use to learn a concept, right? Like hands-on.
Yeah, like building blocks if you're learning math.
Yeah.
Or, those little letter tiles when you're learning to spell. But instead of a classroom having to have boxes and boxes of all this stuff, AR, it lets you like manipulate those things virtually.
Right.
So no more messy classrooms.
Yeah, exactly. And the best part is Brantley, she actually uses AR with her students' phones.
Oh, wow.
So like it's totally accessible and kids can keep learning even when they're not at school. And she even mentions the story, right, about a student who was like really struggling with balancing equations. But then with the AR app, boom, they totally got it.
See, that's what's so cool about AR. It allows for that personalized learning, Like imagine learning at your own pace, but in a way that actually makes sense to you. Like that's a game changer.
Absolutely. And then we have this other piece from ACTE, and they go into how AR actually teams up with, virtual reality, VR, and artificial intelligence, AI, to make these crazy immersive experiences.
No, and it's good to clarify, right? Because a lot of people, they hear AR, VR, they think it's all the same thing.
Right.
But with VR, you're like stepping into a totally different world, right? You put on that headset and suddenly you're walking around ancient Rome. But AR, it's like enhancing the reality you're already in, It's like having X-ray vision, but for anything you want to learn about.
I love that. And there's this example in the article about a school, a K-Tech Veda Academy in Alabama, and they're using VR to, get this, simulate different workplaces.
No way.
Yeah. So students can actually practice like job interviews and see what it would be like to have that job for real.
It's almost like a career test drive,
Exactly.
Without any of the real world risks. And for those who are maybe thinking about fire science or law enforcement even, it's a safe place to practice things that, in real life would be really risky.
Exactly. And it's easy to think, right, that AR is only for, techie subjects, but it goes way beyond that.
Oh, for sure.
And in fact, Apple, they've got this whole lesson plan guide showing how you can use AR for all sorts of subjects.
Yeah, Apple's really leaning into the whole versatility of AR, It's like, it's not just STEM fields anymore, It can really enrich learning in any subject.
It can. So like imagine this, right? You're in history class and you can check out a 3D model of an Egyptian sarcophagus.
Wow.
Or you're in a literacy class and you can build your own like interactive stories with an app.
Oh, that's cool.
Or even in math, if you have trouble with abstract stuff, there are AR apps that let you like walk around and see 3D shapes. I mean, the possibilities are pretty wild. So I'm curious, like what stood out to you most from all these examples in terms of how they could like change the way we learn?
What really gets me excited is that AR makes learning active.
Right.
It's not just sitting there, absorbing information. It's about doing and creating and experiencing.
Right. It's like turning lessons into like adventures.
Exactly, yeah.
And there's this one excerpt we found, and they make this bold claim, right? That AR and VR can actually expose students to like different careers and personalize their learning.
Wow.
And even build confidence through free practice.
Right, because think about it. Imagine like practicing welding But in a virtual world, before you ever have to touch a real torch, like that takes away so much of the fear, right. Especially with those hands-on things.
Oh, totally. And speaking of hands-on, we found this awesome YouTube video. It's all about Miller welders and it's called Augmented Arc, I think. It's like this AR welding simulator, and students can practice. They get real-time feedback, but without, the fear of messing up and wasting materials and all that.
Right. That's so smart. And I bet it's way more cost effective too. For schools, for businesses, you're not wasting materials. You don't need as much instructor time. Like the implications are huge.
Huge, yeah. So we've seen how AR can make learning more engaging, more personal. But the big question is, like, how can it impact your learning,
That is the question, isn't it? And it's something we should all be thinking about as we, move forward. Like, think about a skill you'd love to learn or a subject you'd like to explore deeper, but do it in this risk-free AR environment. Like, the possibilities are just endless. It's pretty amazing to think that AR can, like, change what we learn, but also how we learn, you know? Like, it's a whole new, like, dimension to education.
Yeah, totally. And I think one of the coolest things is how it taps into our, like, natural curiosity. Think about it. When you were a kid, you learned by, like, exploring, experimenting, playing, right? AR brings that back.
Yeah. It's like turning learning into a game.
Yeah.
And, when learning feels like play, you're, like, way more engaged.
Exactly. And, going back to what we talked about earlier with those personalized learning paths, AR lets you make the learning experience fit your own needs.
And that's huge for people who maybe didn't do well with, like, the traditional way of teaching. Imagine, like, being able to learn at your own speed, focusing on what you need help with, and just, like, breezing through the stuff you already get.
And remember when Brantley said that AR lets teachers learn alongside their students? It's like everyone's discovering together.
Yeah. It's so cool. It's like you shift from just sitting there listening to actually being a part of the learning.
Totally. And it's not just about the student and teacher either. Think about, like, what it could do for students learning from each other.
Oh, right. Like, imagine a group of students in an AR environment, and they're, like, working together to solve a problem or build something. It's a perfect way to learn those, like, 21st century skills, like communication, teamwork, thinking critically, all that.
That brings up an interesting question, though. What about the teacher in all this? Like, are we going to have robots teaching classes now?
No. It's not about replacing teachers. AR is about, like, giving them more tools.
Oh, okay.
It lets them be more than just the person standing at the front of the class lecturing. They can be more like a guide, a mentor.
Yeah. I like that. It's like with AR, students can kind of direct their own learning more.
Right, exactly.
So the teacher can focus on, like, giving each student the specific help they need.
Yeah, like a personal tutor for everyone.
And don't forget about assessment. AR opens up a whole new world for, like, testing what students have learned.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
No more boring multiple choice tests. Imagine students showing what they know through, like, simulations or building 3D models or even giving presentations, but virtually.
Yeah. That's way more interesting. And you get much better idea of what they can actually do, not just if they can remember facts.
Right. So we've talked about how AR is great for students, for teachers, but what about parents? What do they get out of this?
Well, for one thing, AR makes learning something they can see and understand. It's not just a grade on a report card. They can actually see their kid working with the material, figuring out tough stuff, and creating things.
That's a really good point. It's like bringing the classroom home so families can actually talk about what's being learned.
Yeah, totally. And, that connection to the real world, it's super important in career technical education.
Right.
AR can connect what's happening in school to what's happening in like actual jobs in a way we've never been able to before.
And that reminds me of those VR workplace simulations. Like that's a perfect example, right?
Totally.
Students can get a feel for what it's actually like to do a job, talk to coworkers, use real tools.
Yeah. It's like a virtual internship. They can test out different careers before they even graduate.
And think about what it could do for like professional development too. People could use AR to learn new skills or like update their old ones whenever they need to.
Oh, right. And it's all personalized and available 24/7. Plus, it's way cheaper than traditional training. No travel costs, no materials,
It's wild to think how AR could change everything, from kindergarten all the way to like someone's career.
Yeah. It's really about making learning better for everyone, making it more engaging, more personalized, and just easier to access.
But it's not all perfect, right? Like any new technology, there are going to be challenges. What are some things we need to think about when it comes to like actually using AR in education?
Well, one of the biggest ones is making sure everyone has equal access to the tech and resources. Not all schools or students can afford the devices and stuff needed for AR.
Right. It's like that whole digital divide thing we've been dealing with forever.
Exactly. And we have to make sure that AR doesn't make that worse. It should help to make things more fair, not less. And even in schools that do have the technology, it might not be used the same way everywhere. We need to make sure all students are getting a good AR learning experience, no matter where they come from or what school they go to.
Yeah, that's a really key point, right? Like technology can be a great way to make things more equal, but only if everyone can, use it.
Right.
We don't want AR to just become like another perk for the kids who already have more.
Exactly. And it's not just about having the devices either.
Right.
It's about having good content and teachers who know how to, use AR the right way.
Yeah. And teacher training, that came up a lot in our research. We can't just expect teachers to like figure out all this new tech on their own.
Right. Put yourself in their shoes, right? They already have so much on their plate.
Oh, yeah.
And then you add AR. I mean, it's a lot if they don't have the right support and training.
Totally. And then there's the question of like, okay, you've got the AR, but are you using it to actually teach?
Yeah.
Or is it just like a fun distraction?
Yeah, right. That's where good teaching practices come in. AR is a tool, but it's up to the teachers to make sure it's, helping students really learn and think critically.
And like anything else in education, you got to be careful about the content too. Just because it's an AR app doesn't mean it's good.
Yeah, so it might be all flashy and exciting, but like not actually teach anything worthwhile.
Right, exactly.
You got to be picky and choose those AR experiences that are, high quality. Relevant, like are they designed to actually help students learn something specific?
And you can't forget about data privacy either, especially with kids using their own phones and tablets and stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Schools need to have clear rules about, how to protect student data and make sure the tech is being used responsibly.
And then, of course, there's the fact that technology changes so fast. Like what's cool today might be old news tomorrow.
That's why it's so important for teachers to keep learning, to keep up with all the new stuff.
So we've talked about some bumps in the road, but I think the big takeaway is that these challenges, we can overcome them.
For sure.
With good planning and everyone working together, AR really can change education for the better.
I totally agree. Like AR is not a magic solution, but it's a powerful tool. It can make learning more engaging, more personal, and just better for everyone.
So for everyone listening, what's the big takeaway here? Like what should you be thinking about when it comes to AR, whether it's for you or, for your kids?
I think the most important thing is to be like cautiously optimistic, like be excited about what AR can do, but also realize there are, challenges to work through. Ask questions, be critical, and push for AR to be used responsibly and fairly.
I love that. Cautiously optimistic. It's like, yeah, be excited, but also be realistic.
Right, exactly.
And remember, the future of learning, we're not just like waiting for it to happen. We're all creating it together.
Right.
And by having these conversations and making smart choices, we can make sure education works for everyone. That's a great way to wrap things up. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into AR.